Alright, we have a Cobalt 2100 ASC3 controller by Econolite, and today we are going to look at how this particular controller logs the pedestrian information into its database. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this controller with a TS2 virtual cabinet. And once you open the virtual cabinet, open up the MMU and load up a default setup that you want, and then hit connect. And as you can see, the controller is now resting on phase 2 and phase 6, which is the coordinated movement. And the next step I'm going to do is open up a cool little software that's going to help us to see the controller front panel real time. It's an emulator that helps us to see the controller interface. And the IP address of this controller is 192.168.1.2, and the port is 501. And once we get connected, you'll see the information on the controller cabinet, front panel right now. It's the real-time emulator of the controller front panel. So I'm going to put these things side by side just to see how as you can see from the TS2 virtual cabinet, the controller is resting on phase 2 and 6, so from the emulator. And then I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pedestrian call on both of our coordinated phases, which is phase 2 and phase 6, and our non-coordinated phase, which is our phase 4 and phase 8. And to do that, I'm going to also record the time at which we are going to put the calls. At 3:41, I'm going to put a pet call on phase 2 and phase 6, which is already serving the pet calls. So I'm going to wait a little bit and just get this thing done, get it served, and then I'm going to put the calls on the side street and also on the main line. So at let's say at 25, I'm going to put pet call on phase 2 and phase 6. 24, 25. So I put call over here at 2 and 6, which is at 3:41:25 and then I'm gonna put call off, and then I'm gonna wait a little bit to get the pedestrian call served. And then as you can see, the phase pedestrian call is getting served, it's on the hold right now, which is pedestrians are walking, and in a very short time it's gonna go on the yellow and the red. Now it's on yellow, so they can walk, but they have to yield, and then it's gonna go red. So the main line, so the phase 2 and 6 is pet calls on phase 2 and 6, and they're getting served. They got served. And the next step, I'm gonna put call on our side street or our non-coordinated phase, which is phase 4 and phase 8, at around 3:42:30. And then I'm gonna take the calls out at 40. And then I'm going to wait a little bit to get that call served. So what it will happen is the main line is going to go on the side street and the peds are going to get served. Almost okay. As you can see, we're waiting for the side street to turn on and then the walking to get served. As you can see, it's on yellow on the phase 2 and 6, and it's gonna go on the 4 and 8, and the pedestrian is walking. So now we're gonna wait until it gets red and go back to the coordination. So the non-coordinate phase is gonna get red, and now the coordination starts, and it also starts the walking. So our next step would be to go back to the controller database and get the data out of it and see how this controller logs those information that we just worked on. So to get the data out of the controller, we're going to use the FileZilla I'm going to minimize those anyway. So the host is the controller IP. Sorry, you have to put 168.1.2, then username, the password, and then you're in. So we are inside the controller right now. So where we want to go is set one folder where our data is getting stored. Once you go inside the set one folder of the controller, you'll see a lot of dat file, which is the zipped version of the dat file. So this one is the latest file that we worked on. So we're going to download this to our desktop. Once it's downloaded, we're going to take this data file and copy it to our translator folder. This is our high resolution translator that we are going to use to translate this dat file into a readable CSV file. So you have to open up the command prompt from the same folder directory where you put your data. Oh, I forgot to put the data inside the folder. So there it is, the data we want to translate. Now I have to open up the CMD. So I'm going to put this thing to side by side so that you can see. So first thing you need to do, you need to type in the high resolution translator name and the file name, and it's going to create a CSV file. This is basically the converted the translated version of the dat file. So we're going to open it up, and I'm going to put this in, and this is our timestamp. We don't need till this. So this is started at 3 p.m. So the new file started at 3 p.m. By the way, the controller logs these events at every 1 hour interval. So it means that every 1 hour interval there will be a new file generated inside the controller database. So this is the file. I'm going to convert these numbers into a readable date time format. I'm going to choose these, and I'm going to add seconds in there, and then I'm going to format paint the whole column. So this is the timestamp at which every event is getting logged, and this is the event type, what kind of event that happened, and this is actually the parameters. These are the information there of the controller, like the MAC address, the intersection IDs and IP address and all the stuff. So if you remember that at around 3:41:25 we put pedestrian call on our coordinated phase 2 and 6. We want to retrieve that information, and we want to see if that's being logged in the controller database. So I'm going to go directly to 3:41, which is a long way. Okay, 3:41:25 or 26, something like that. So there it is, 3:41, actually 24. So we did put call on our on phase 2, and we did put call on the phase 6. So now I need to mention that what is event code 45. So event code 45 basically means the event, what event pedestrian call event is being registered. So to translate that into a readable number, I need to open up the Indiana traffic signal high resolution data logger enumeration, which is a long sentence, by the way. And then I'm gonna go to event code 45. I'm gonna put this one side by side just to show what does it mean by event code 45. This column is event code, like whatever event happened, and this one represents the parameter, like which phase does this thing happen. Okay, so event code 45, that means that a pedestrian call is being registered to the controller. So which means we did put call on phase 2 at 15:41, which is registered, and then some events 48, and then event 90. Event code 90 means on event code 90 on phase 2, it means that if I remember correctly, the pedestrian detector is on. Yeah, the pedestrian detector on event happened also at 3:42. So whenever we click, whenever we click the pet call over over here, so the controller registers both of these event code at the same time. So at the same time, at the same happened with phase 6. So whenever we click over here, it registers the pedestrian detector is on first, and then it detects that a pedestrian call is being registered. So then event code 46 for both of them, it on. So whenever the phase 2 and phase 6, if a pedestrian call is registered at the same time, on the on our non-coordinate phase, event code 46 is being registered for both event 4 and phase 8 and for phase 4. So the next step, what we did turn off the PET call. So that means we even initially at this event code 45 and 90, it means whenever we put call on phase 2 and phase 6 like that, and it was registered as an event code 90, 45, and when we take out these calls, the controller sees that as an event code 89 just over here, and event code 89 means detector is off, like PET detector is off. This is exactly what the controller sees this information as. So this is kind of cool that we get to see what kind of information, how those information are being logged at the controller. So on the next step, we did put call on the non-coordinated phase, which is phase 4 and 8, at around 3:42:30. So 3:42:30. So yep, yes, not 30-ish, I would say. So as you can see over here, I'm going to explain and show this information at the same time. So like I said before, that whenever we did put call on phase 4, just like this, phase 4 and phase 8, the controller sees that is information event code 90 and 45, because we put call on phase 4 and phase 8 at the same time. And what does it mean? Like I said, event code 90 means the pedestrian detector is on, and 45 is the PET call is registered. And after a couple of seconds, if I remember, after a couple of seconds, like 10 seconds later, we turned off the call. We turned off these calls, and just like this, and the controller sees those event as event code 89, which is pedestrian detector is off. And I'm gonna match those yes, pedestrian detector is off. So see, this is pretty cool that we get to see this kind of information on the database too, and we can match this information, how this controller looks at this information. And so this is kind of cool, and it goes back to, if I remember, go back to coordination and all those stuff. So you get to see those information. That's pretty cool, and I hope we're gonna do our next video on the Siemens controller. All right, that's it.